Awesome. Thanks, Ben. Well, thank you everybody for being here. My name is Jody Nowicki. I am a Senior Director of Stakeholder Engagement with Rocky Mountain Partnership, and our team is honored to facilitate this work on behalf of the Adams County Opioid Council. Joined with me is Ben Nash from our team, who behind the scenes is going to be monitoring the chat and putting links for you all. And then we also have Gabriel Rodriguez from the Adams County government. They are the fiscal agent over the grant, but is also here to help talk about the process, the application, and answer any questions that you all may have. If you wouldn't mind, just in the chat, if you can just, we're not going to do introductions because we want to get to the information for you all, but just put your name, organization that you're with, just so we know who is in the room, and that if we need to follow up with anybody, we can. If you have any questions as we're going, please put them in the chat, raise your hand, unmute. We'd love for this to be as much of a dialogue as possible. We have some information prepared for you, but we really want to make sure that questions that you have get answered. So without further ado, I will go ahead and get started. Can everybody see my screen? Okay. So we're going to provide an overview about the grant itself and the Adams County Opioid Council, the process and timeline, the scoring matrix, and the application, and have an opportunity for Q&A at the end. And also just want to note, we do have a FAQ document on the website that Ben will link here in just a minute. And so we'll be adding to that if there's questions that come up here that aren't addressed in that document as well. So about the grant and the council, the Adams County Opioid Abatement Grant exists to provide critical funding to efforts that are really intended to abate the opioid crisis in the Adams County region in alignment with a statewide joint framework. So as you likely know, through the Attorney General's office, the state of Colorado stands to receive over $400 million. I think that number has actually gone up on their website in the last month, over $500 million from litigation settlements that have been reached with companies who fueled the opioid crisis. And these dollars are coming into the state over the next 18 years. And as additional litigation settlements are reached, that number may also go up. The Adams County Council are who you see here on your screen. The state was divided into 19 regions. And so Adams County is its own region, although there is definitely opportunity for collaboration with our neighboring regions. The focus of this council is on Adams County. And you can see we have representation from two of our Adams County commissioners, Commissioner Eva Henry and Steve Odorisio. We have representation from our cities, Council Member Peter Padilla from City of Brighton and Council Member Eric Garcia from City of Thornton. Human Resources from Adams County is represented by Glenn Robinson, the Deputy Director. The Adams County Health Department, Dr. Kelly Weidenbach. Levon Hupfer from the District Attorney's Office. Local law enforcement, Chief May from the City of North Glen, and then Chief Don Quick, who is a chief judge for the 17th Judicial District. So these folks are responsible for ultimately making the decisions on how dollars are spent, but are very committed to getting community input every step of the way. So you may have seen emails coming out, even wanting community input on things such as the application itself and the process that is being followed. They have made the following determination. So for this first year, call it for 2023, the allocations that will be distributed are just over $3 million. It's not going to be the same amount every year. And a lot of that will likely depend on other settlements that come in. And also knowing that municipalities within Adams County also have the option to keep some dollars or put them in this more regional pot. So this number is likely going to fluctuate year to year. But for this first year, you can see the percentages and the corresponding dollar amounts for these different categories. of how they'd like to see the funding spent. They went through a process of looking at what currently exists, what gaps exist, what do best practices and research say, to come up with these percentages and dollar amounts. And I'll have Ben put in the chat a link to our website. There is a document on the website that really outlines the what's included in each of these categories. What are some examples of that, and the justification or rationale behind these percentages being the way they are. I will call out that there is a possibility that this may adjust depending on what applications for funding come in. They are able to make modifications to this through March of this year. So if there's maybe a need or some strong cases made for spending more money in one area, there is some flexibility for the council to be able to do that. So for the process and timeline, you may have already seen this. Proposals are due at the end of January, and then the Rocky Mountain Partnership team, along with some representation from Adams County staff, not from any departments that would be applying for funds, and then also some other content experts, will be going through vetting proposals and conducting just preliminary scoring on behalf of the regional council, making sure that applications are complete, that the information that's requested is there, and then using the matrix that we'll go over in just a minute here with some preliminary scoring so that they can see what's come in. They will have time as regional council members to review all the proposals that have come in, and also accompanying that will be an assessment of what needs might not be met for the region with the proposals that have come through. That may or may not be the case, but we'll really kind of put together a landscape assessment of what needs will and wouldn't be met by these proposals. And then they will be coming back together at the end of February on the 24th to do their final scoring of proposals, determine which they would like to fund, and make the determination if an additional funding cycle may be needed in 2023. Right now, it's just one, but they may decide to allocate a certain percentage of the dollars now and then open it up again later in the year. And then they're keen to get input from the community on those recommendations for what proposals to fund. So for about a week, there will be a survey open for community to take and provide input to the council. They'll reconvene on March 10th to finalize those decisions, take a look at any input that comes through that survey. Once they make that final decision, it will go to the Adams County Board of County Commissioners to officially endorse these funding recommendations as the fiscal agent. This is part of the process that needs to be followed because Adams County government will be the entity that's actually distributing the funds. So those awardees will be notified by the end of March, and we will be seeking input from all applications on this process to improve it moving forward. But that is high level process and timeline that is being followed. And Gabe and Ben, if I'm forgetting anything as I'm going, please pop in. The scoring matrix and application. There is a document that Ben will also put in the chat of a detailed scoring matrix. And the idea behind this is really to make the process as objective as possible. So you'll see here the 8 criteria that all proposals will be evaluated on from a scale of 1 to 4. And in the document that he's sharing, it shows what are some of those things to look for a 1, 2, 3, or 4 for each of these criteria. And the idea with the application is that it mirrors the scoring matrix so you can see what questions correspond with different elements of the scoring matrix. You'll also note that it is weighted. This is nothing that you need to worry about or any math that anyone's doing, but some of these questions are going to be weighted a little bit more heavily than others as decisions that the council had made on which ones really are the most important, although they are all important. So that's a formula that's happening on the back end to weight some of the questions. but you can see how they're all being weighted. So for the application, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up this document, and Ben will link this for you all in the chat as well. So the application will be submitted on SurveyMonkey, but that's tedious to have to go into and look at all the questions ahead of time. So we've created this PDF that's an exact mirror of everything that's in that SurveyMonkey. So you can see all of the content and questions that will be asked, so that you can go in just in one full sweep and input your answers. Technical standpoint, we have realized with some applications that have already come in that you're not able to pause, save, and then go back. So we highly recommend putting together all the information, including documents that need to be linked, and then submitting it in SurveyMonkey all at the same time. If there are questions or concerns, though, you can definitely reach out to myself, Ben. We'll put the email that we have for this effort in the chat, that we can help with those applications, but know that that's something that has come up. So asking for some organizational information. Some of the proposals we anticipate will be for primary or singular organizations, but some may be more collaborative. And so looking for information on who the primary applying organization is, and if there's others, who they would be, and also calling out that this application is not limited to nonprofits. So we're really interested in identifying what type of organizations are included on your application. Council would also like to see not only the total amount requested, but if you could break that down within those different categories that they've prioritized, what that might look like, recognizing that some applications may cover more than one of those priority areas. And noting if you'd be willing to accept a partial award. There's then the opportunity to provide a brief description of the program or effort that you're applying for, explaining how it will address the opioid crisis in Adams County. And really, this is a chance, the pitch, you will, the narrative pitch on what is the difference you're hoping to make in Adams County and what specific populations you're focused on, before digging into some of the more specific questions. And I'll pause. I feel like I'm talking a lot. Are there any questions so far? All right, I'm going to keep going. I see someone just joined the waiting room, Ben, if you wouldn't mind letting them in. So one of the things that is important for the council is that the funds are making a measurable impact. And so there is a hyperlink here. I'm not going to open it right now, but there's an interactive data dashboard that is the council is using. It's through the Rocky Mountain Partnership. So really wanting to look at that and see what outcomes, what data metrics that we're looking at is this proposal tied to. And if it doesn't really apply to any, explaining what data measure that isn't included in that dashboard that we might need to be looking at. So definitely interested in hearing if there's anything that's missing from an outcome perspective. And they're also really interested in evaluating projects on an ongoing basis, rather than just looking at the end of a year cycle and saying, did in fact this proposal make an impact? And so interested in identifying what does success look like and what might you be able to be tracking and looking at in real time to see if it's having its desired impact, so that if changes need to be made in real time, they can. Jason.
Hi, thanks. I guess one question I missed earlier, is there any eligibility requirements that I didn't see any outside of being in Adams County as to organizations or limitations?
There really aren't. Gabe, are you there? Are you aware of anything that I might be missing? It's pretty open on purpose.
Yes. Okay. It's open on purpose, Jason, because we as a county and the regional council don't know what's out there. Like this is a learning process, just like it's a learning process for you all probably applying for this grant.
Yep, fair enough. That's helpful. Thank you. And then the other part is, Jody, this dashboard's great. It's got a lot of stuff on it. Is there specific, I mean, I know some of them, I was just going through it. I saw some of the areas still are sort of to be filled out. So are there, when you talk about outcomes for the dashboard, are there specific areas to target or just trying to
Yeah. And so really, that's a great question. The current state data tab is really where you'll want to be looking at. This is the outcomes. So looking at opioid overdose deaths, hospitalizations, emergency department visits. There's a whole list here. These are really the outcomes that the council is looking at. But that is the tab, the current state data tab. Great question. And Ben, sorry, on the back end, I just sent you a message. Can you add Callie from Adams County Health Department? So she has the Zoom link. Thank you. And I think like Gabe was saying, Jason, that this is a learning experience. And so a lot of you all, folks that will be applying for these funds as content experts, I think we're really eager to hear if there are things that may need to be captured that aren't already on here and things that we might need to be considering supporting this council to look at. Nope. The application. The last thing I was going to add around this accountability to impact is something to note is you may or may not already be thinking about what we would call as key performance metrics or those KPIs, those things in real time to be looking at. And so for those proposals that are awarded, part of what that process will be is working with the Rocky Mountain Partnership team to dig in and see what's feasible and what could actually be tracked in real time. So don't have to have necessarily like the perfect answer, but want folks to start thinking about what those might be, but know that there is more technical assistance and support that will come with these funds. So the next section is really around efficacy. So this is a pretty big conversation that the council had. Want to make sure that funds are being spent in a way that they're sure to yield an impact. And so there may be best practices or evidence-based practices. What are you doing that's supported by research? But there's also a recognition that there may be strategies and solutions and proposals that come in that don't have as a robust backing by that. So if there's something that is really up and coming, I forget what the term is, Ben, maybe you can help me out, that's in the matrix. But what evidence or support for your program or your proposal does exist that would essentially make the case for why it would be successful. Do you remember the terminology that they agreed upon, Ben?
I don't exactly remember. I'm looking through the matrix right now. I will put it in the chat if I can find it.
Thank you. And then again, meeting the needs of Adams County. So why does our community need this proposal? What gaps are you intending to fill? And is collaboration with other entities or organizations something that's already happened, ongoing, or slated to the future? Does that make sense for your proposal? And if it doesn't, also giving a chance to explain why it may not make sense for all proposals because there is such a wide net of priorities here.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Is the timeline one year? Is that what the proposals are?
Yes. Yep. And that's a great question and something that's on the website as well, that you can see the timeline for the rest of this year. You'll notice that the council is actually interested in the next round of funding going out by the end of 2023. So there will be a little bit of overlap. Because right now, I think there was just a lot of level setting infrastructure building to be able to get to a place for these dollars to go out. They won't be going out until end of March, early April, but for next year, really want to make sure that that decision is made by the end of the year so that we can kickstart 2024 with more dollars going out. So there will be an overlap there, but then that will reset the cadence of how they anticipate the funding rounds going out. And then these last section, council is just interested in learning a little bit more about if your proposal is something that you're building upon, or is it a brand new strategy that we would have in this region. Some programs and projects will require licenses to operate. So wanting to know if this applies to your proposal, and if so, is your organization program licensed? Same thing for staff. So what might those licenses be, and do you already have them? Really interested in those. Also interested in if your organization has carried out projects of this scope and or size in the past, what has success looked like? It is a 1-year grant cycle. So interested in the timeline for the proposal, when you would expect to see an intended impact, even if that does go beyond the 1 year, right? There's probably going to be some level setting things that need to happen there. Do you already have access to the needed capacity and resources? For example, staff or physical space, materials, or is this something that this grant would help address? What other funding sources are you utilizing or planning on utilizing to sustain beyond this grant? And looking at administrative costs, there is a recommendation that administrative costs not exceed actual costs or 10%. However, there was also a conversation with council that there may be a justification as to why that might not make sense for your proposal. So wanting to create that space to say why, if you don't feel like that is realistic, to justify it. The file uploads that they're asking for include a budget and 2 letters of support in PDF form. And if you were a nonprofit, uploading the most recent fiscal year financial statement. And you can upload all of those through SurveyMonkey as well. I know there's a lot happening in the chat. I'm not looking at it. So are there any questions that have been lifted in the chat? Ben?
I have a question, Jody, if you don't. And I think it's implied maybe in question or in the number 14 up there, but I just wanted to ask, is the council looking at these funds as one-time in nature? Because a lot of what we're looking at are kind of programmatic that have ongoing costs. And I'm curious if you have any direction from the council on the approach of this grant.
That's a great question. And Gabe, I'll also lean on you here, but my understanding is that there may very well be multi-year, or maybe not a multi-year grant, but grants that are renewed on an ongoing basis.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jody, we have a couple, 1 or 2 questions from Wanda in the chat. Can a nonprofit that's a few miles north of Adams County serving justice involved and others with substance use disorders from Adams receive funds?
Yeah, I think the council is really interested in understanding how Adams County residents will be served. So even if the nonprofit isn't physically located in Adams County, if the case can be made for how Adams County residents are served, that wouldn't preclude you from applying.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I'm just scanning here. Jason.
This is going back a bit, but can you talk a little bit more? You had talked about some more real-time data availability. Do you have an idea of what that looks like as far as getting it into the dashboard and sort of, it speaks to kind of what the technical lift is for any grant as to kind of what you're looking for. I don't know if you've gotten that far yet, or if it's just an idea of it.
So I think the short answer is it's going to kind of depend on what the proposal is for and what the capacity of an organization is, right? We definitely, and I know the council doesn't want that to become so much of a burden on a smaller organization that may not have that data capacity, which is why that technical assistance through Rocky Mountain Partnership is there. Definitely are interested in tracking these key performance indicators ongoing. So as an example, if it is a direct service provider that is administering I mean, it could be if it's something as simple as Narcan, we'll just use that as an example, right? Like tracking how many times Narcan was either administered or distributed over the course of a quarter. You know, it does not have to be like a daily tracking of data. I don't know if that answers your question, but really looking at what are those things that ladder up to the ultimate impact that you're hoping to make, while also being realistic there. So I think that it is kind of up to the organization to guide what makes sense for you, and what considerations are there, but it's definitely not intended to be like, please give us data every single week and completely tank your team for the sake of this, but just be thinking about what can we be looking at, so we're not waiting a full year to see, but rather more incrementally data points. All right, I don't think there's any other questions in the chat unless I'm missing some. So I'll pop back over here. Oh, and I guess I don't really have much, and we can continue with questions and answers, but I'll pull up the timeline as well for next steps, in case that's helpful. Any other questions? There is an FAQ document. I alluded to that. I think Ben, you probably already put that in the chat. We will be monitoring questions that come in, not just from today, but anything that comes in email, and upload or updating that FAQ document linked on the email, so that that can be an ongoing reference for folks. Thank you, Ben, for that. And we'll also be linking this recording for folks to be able to look at if they weren't able to join today. I know there were some Zoom challenges. Gabe, do you have anything that you would like to add from the county's standpoint?
No, I think we covered it, Jody. Thank you.
Yeah.
Actually, just one thing for everybody applying for grants. The regional council knows that this funding is new, and so they're just trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work, they're going into it with just I would say both eyes open and saying, okay, what is the community saying, and how can we use this funding long term to address some of these situations? So by all means, if you think of something creative, there's a creative solution, an innovative solution, by all means, throw it in your grant and let's see what works, because we're trying to figure out what works to address this situation. In government, it's easy. If there's potholes, you fill the potholes, that's easy. But with this one, there's a lot more variables. And so we're just trying to figure out what works, so.
Excuse me, and I pulled up on the website, you may have already seen this, a letter from the council, but really recognizing that our community deserves innovation and new approaches. And so there is a commitment there to really consider what might not exist in this region that could benefit Adams County. All right, well, we can give you some time back. I know we had an hour booked, but if there aren't any questions, happy to stay on for a few minutes. If there's anything lingering, otherwise we can give you time back today. All of this information is located on our website. So the application to SurveyMonkey, where you will actually submit your application, but then the PDF of application questions, the scoring matrix, our FAQs, all of that. The Q&A session will be linked here, the timeline. So a lot of information on that website, but please reach out to us if you have any questions as you're going. And we're here to help.
I applied for an opioid grant writer through that program, and they seem to be really hesitant to approve me because I'm like 5 miles or so north of the Adams border. But I will definitely be serving justice involved and, you know, people coming out of detox and anywhere from Adams County. And so you said that I could apply, but they seem to be unwilling to approve me for a grant writer. So I don't know how that works, but.
Who did you apply through for a grant writer through?
Through the state opioid money through the Attorney General's office.
Oh.
Colorado Consortium, Wanda?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
that's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've been interacting with me, but they just seem like they do not want to approve it. And you have to, well, it says you have to apply for the grant writer at least 3 weeks before the grant is due, the proposal is due. And I'm right on that line, but I have applied for it quite a while ago. But tomorrow would be the 3-week deadline, so they're making me a little nervous. They haven't reached out to you, evidently, to ask if they can approve me for a grant writer for the Adams County opioid money.
Jennifer, is that something that you have any information about? That's outside of our scope. So I'm not sure.
I mean, I guess, Wanda, I would maybe recommend, now that you've heard from Jody, that they are saying that they would be willing to look at RFPs for people outside of Adams, but work with Adams County folks. You may want to email somebody or call somebody today and just share that information with whoever was saying, you know, you're not eligible, and see if that will help your case. And I'm sure, you know, I mean, I would start there.
Well, and they never came right out and said you're not eligible. They just have been going back and forth, asking questions that I'm answering. And then when I said the way that I read the RFP is that it's Adams or serving the Adams region. And then they just didn't respond after that at all. I got no answer.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I do have an email address for Teresa something.
Yep. Yeah, Teresa, and I would just email her today. And I will put my email in the chat as well, Wanda. If for some reason you don't hear back from Teresa, that's her program she manages, but sounds like you need an answer today. So I will let her know to look for your email.
Oh, thank you so much. I really
welcome.
appreciate that greatly.
All right, thank you for helping there, Jennifer. Any other last minute questions? Okay. Well, you know how to get a hold of us. If you do, as you go through the process, we are here to help, and we look forward to hearing from you. So enjoy the rest of your Monday afternoon. Thanks, Jennifer.